Hello and welcome to Elvenhome and to this episode, which really concentrates mainly on the building of the workers' cottage, the Petite Properties low relief workers' cottage that I mentioned to you in the last video. There's also a section on Tool to Watch, and I talk a little bit about some lighting that I'm going to be using for the workers' cottage at the end. So let's get on to the video and take a look at the start of the work of building the cottages. In the last video I said that I would be showing you how to build this kit. It's a kit from Petite Properties, the Station Road Terrace, and I bought two of these and also two of another low relief kit, workers' cottages. I've been waiting for a while for this to come into stock, and I managed, when it was in stock, I got all four. And those are going to run parallel, at right angles rather, to High Elven Station and the goods yard, along the back scene on the left-hand side to create Station Road. But it is, I think, it's a lovely kit. It is capable of being lit, and I will show in a later section, once I complete the next model, how I'm going to light this. The base has 3 holes in it, so you can light each house if you wish, or only some of them. But I've also used the Woodland Scenic's light filter kit to provide that opaque look through the windows, because otherwise the clear windows that you get with the kit, you'd be able to see in and see that there was nothing inside. So I'll come back in just a minute once I've cleared the decks a bit, and we'll start building the kit. And then I'll talk you through the process of creating this Petite Properties kit. Okay, I've opened the packet out from what you saw in the previous clip, and I just want to talk you through those things before I start building, and I'll decide as I go along whether what you'll see will be stills taken at various stages or perhaps some footage. I'll see. Much depends on what is the most sensible way to work. These are not difficult kits to put together. But the beauty of them is that they come as in this plain way, and as you can see, the kit has not many parts to it. It's got this, which forms the back and side walls and floor, 2 internal walls, the roof section, the front wall, this containing various architectural detail, which is already painted up because I did all the painting of these when I did the painting here. It just made sense to, as I had the paints out. These form essentially porches for entrance to the door to provide spaces before the doors go behind. These are the form your chimney breasts, and these are the chimney pots. And in both kits, I had more than enough chimney pots, so they are giving you enough that should the carpet monster swallow one of them, you still have enough chimney pots to work. To cover the carcass, I have decided to make use of a model railway scenery. If I bring this down into picture, model railway scenery TX14600 scale. It's the pointed slate wall. Now these texture papers, I think they may actually sell them where they print them and send them to you. If you're a member of the Railway Modeller Club, then you get access to all of that as part of your membership, which is how I got this. I chose 00 gauge rather than an N because I think this reduced down to 75% looks better than the N at 100%. The N, it was really quite hard to get the definition between the slates at N, whereas this looks quite nice. It probably is a bit overscale. Some of these slates are probably, seriously big, but the overall effect looks good, and that after all is what you're trying to achieve. For the chimney breasts, I used an engineer's brick, a blue engineer's brick, and I happened to have a retaining wall kit from Scale Scenes. I've no doubt that you can get from Scale Scenes a sheet just of the blue engineer's brick. The kit I was using it from was R13N, but that is the N gauge one, printed at 100%, and that looks all right for the brick. The definition's sufficiently okay for what I need. For the roof, I'm using for the first time something by Reductex, and I may start using more of their stuff. This Reductex was recommended to me when I built the school as an alternative to the Metcalfe roofs. And I have searched high and low on all of the videos about the school to find the comment, and I cannot find it for love nor money. So if you're the person that made the recommendation to me, please drop me a note and I will give you a proper thanks in the next video. It's sort of plasticky rubbery, I think, may even be a rubber compound with a sticky back. I've already painted that up ready ahead of applying. And it's wonderful. It's really very good. For houses, I would definitely do that over the York Model Railway slates. Bigger buildings, the size of the York Model Railway individual slates, it just works better. I think this would look a bit small on a bigger roof, but on the houses it's just brilliant, and it's so much easier to apply than those individual slates. So what I'm going to do now is get on and build, and I will, as I said, I'll make my mind up whether it's just stills and some footage once I get into doing the edit for it. But it's whatever I can do to show you the build going on and the process that I go through to make the build to get to the second of these two models. So I'll come back and talk to you once I've got two of these models fully built. So to start on the build of the model, the first thing you have to do is to create the back walls, side walls and floor by sticking these pieces together. This is fairly straightforward, and you'll see that as I fashioned, I made sure that it was square. First of all, I used a small engineer's square just to make sure that I was getting the building square, because obviously that's really important for the rest of the build. And then I used some magnetic set squares to hold it in position. The next thing to do was to start putting in the internal walls. These go in specific positions because the one on the left hand side of the building has a recess into which the porch with two doors that are close together sit. But again, the instructions, which are well worth reading, will help you to do that. Once I completed both sets of walls, I ended up with the picture you now see. So that is the carcass onto which everything else will now be fixed. Learning from the first build, I cut a piece of paper that was the right height for the side walls. The front is slightly lower because of the slope of the roof. I made sure it was long enough that once I glued the front piece on, there was more than enough at the end to be able to fold the paper round and not have any join on the side. I then glued the front wall on the paper, making sure it was flush at the bottom. As you can see, there's plenty of paper all the way around. I then turned to making sure that the porches were in exactly the right place. Something I didn't do when I made the first model. So both porches were positioned where they would be inside the carcass but not stuck. I then made a trial fit of the front just to make sure that everything fitted together as it should. Once I was sure of that, I was then able to put glue onto the porches, line the front up to the carcass, and stick the porches in the right place on the front. Here you can see them. You will see that they are slightly above the bottom of the front, and that was something else I didn't get right the first time round. I had to do a workaround to fix that problem. Welcome to the second edition of 2 to Watch, in which I showcase 2 of the Engage channels to which I'm subscribed. I'm really pleased to talk about the first of the 2 today. The randomometer that I use to decide on the order in which I'm going to mention channels has given me as number 3 in the list Chris Carter's 4 Oak Street. It was Chris talking on his channel a few weeks ago about the need for N-gauge modelers to mention other N-gauge channels that was the inspiration for me to start this series. Turning to Chris's channel, he is based in Perth, Western Australia, although he's originally from the UK. His layout is set in the UK in the early 1960s. It's been under construction for some years. He is building it in modular form. He says that his aim was to create a continuous run through countryside and town of around 6 minutes, and that's achieved with the fiddle yard on the lower level, currently accessed by a 4-track helix. I've been following for a few years now and watched as he's been working on the area which has got his lower level with the helix, and then some superb modelling on top of these for the main station and the roadways and town that sits above it. The layout turns through 90 degrees and the trains emerge from a tunnel to cross 2 superb viaducts with 2 running lines over each viaduct. Up until recently, that's been the terminus for the trains, and all his time has been spent working on the first area. But for this year, for various reasons, some of which will be obvious, he's had time to do a bit more work. So building the next sections of his layout to go around 2 other walls of the room in which the layout is set. He already has some absolutely superb camera angles for trains passing over the viaducts. The trains he's been running over the viaducts and on some of the other lines have prototypical 9-coach trains being pulled behind the locomotives. They look very real, and I'm going to look forward to seeing his layout develop further as he completes the builds of the new sections. So if you're not already a subscriber to his channel, I do think that you will enjoy following Chris's layout. The second layout is Dug Park Junction. I liked Rich's first video about 2 years ago, and I've been following, I think, pretty much from the beginning. He says in his description that having seen other railway model enthusiasts track the progression of their model railways over the years, he decided to join in. He said progress was likely to be slow as time and money was not always available, but hopefully over the coming weeks, months and years he would be able to share the progression of his railway, called Dug Park Junction, and hoped it would become an area where main lines converge and diverge as trains cross the country. Well, I think he's kept with that idea. His uploads are less regular than some, but it has been really good to watch the development of the layout. He settled on his track plan, with a few additions and changes as he was thinking about it, and put in the work to get the track down and some of the hard landscaping for the various levels. This year has seen him getting to grips with something that he hadn't done on previous layouts, which was scenic work, and the scenic work in particular around his main station. And he's making, I think, an absolutely great job of it. And it's good to see the main station rising from what has until now been mainly largely bare baseboards. It's quite an extensive layout for the loft space that he's in, and it will take a good while, I think, for him to complete it, but it does look really good. And again, because of the size, it's possible for him to run prototypical length trains. So that makes up 2 to watch for this edition. Now, I have enough channels to keep me going at a rate of 2 every 2 weeks until about the middle of April next year. So I'm beginning to wonder whether I should try to increase the number in each episode to get through them quicker. However, I don't want this section to become too long, and I don't want to do a disservice to any of the channels I mentioned by not giving them enough time. So I would just be interested in your views, whether you're happy with just 2 to watch, or whether maybe I should try to do 3 or even 4 in each edition. As ever, I'll put links in the description below the video to both channels for you to go and check them out, and hopefully subscribe to them, because I think both these channels really do deserve to have more subscribers. So that completes 2 to watch for this episode. Having completed that, I moved on to cutting the openings for the windows. Here you can see the pattern I use that I've shown before. This allows me then to fold the texture paper in and around the back to give a better overall look. As you can see, I used one of the sculpting tools that I've shown you in Tooltime Tips to help push the windows through, and then to flatten and sharpen the creases so that the paper bends nicely around to give the effect that the wall is a solid wall and that you don't get white patches around the window frames themselves. Here you can see the view of the completed 6 windows from the front and what they look like from the back with the paper bent over. You can also see that I've made the cuts for the doors in the way that I did for the windows on the school boiler house, because we've got this arch at the top. I cut segments at the top with 2 large pieces at the side, and that then allows me to fold these in and around. They don't actually cover the whole of the porch top, but they won't be seen from above, which is the only angle they will be viewed from. That gives you the completed front in terms of putting on the paper and cutting the various apertures. I then cut out each of the 6 glazing windows for the front. These were glued with Deluxe Glue and Glaze. I like this product because it does dry clear. I then cut out the fanlight windows, glued them in place on the back of the doors, and the doors were then cut out and glued in place. I now turn to the architectural detail on the front of the building, which I think actually is one of the really good things about this kit. I cut out the door frames and fixed them in position. I next cut out the window ledges. Here you can see me fixing on the window ledges. Just a small amount of glue using one of the glue tips on the Rocket card glue bottle. I find that the best way, because otherwise it runs too freely and it grabs so quickly that you end up with a sticky mess. All 6 window ledges are the same from both the top and the bottom, and these are just applied with a pair of tweezers, making sure to put them on the right way around because only one side has been painted. Here's an image showing the window ledges fixed. After that I applied the lintels, and there is a different pattern for the top window lintels and the bottom. I then applied the light diffusing film from Woodland Scenics just to cover the windows so that they are opaque. With all that complete, I could fit everything together. Here I am just putting the front up to the carcass to make sure everything was fitting properly. It is exactly as I wanted, although it was a bit of a tight fit. Once I glued the front in place, I could remove the excess paper. I started by making 2 vertical cuts from the top of each side wall to the top of the paper. This is to allow me to make the fold around the side of the building. This image gives you a better view of the side of the building with it glued in place. After doing the same on the other side, I trimmed off the excess pieces on the slope of the roof, and you can see that completed here on either side. I then trimmed off most of the excess from the top of the front wall, but I left about 3mm. As you can see in this image, I bent that over the top of the wall to avoid leaving any white space at the wall top. That gave me the completed carcass. I could now turn to the roof and chimney breasts. Here I am using the Reductex, which has a plastic backing which you peel away. I peeled away the whole length along the long side and then folded back the paper so that I was able to line up the bottom edge of the roof with the Reductex. Here you can see me working out which way to apply it. In the end, I decided it was easier to take the card to the Reductex than the other way around. Once I was sure that it was in position, I could remove the remainder of the backing paper. I could then smooth the Reductex into place, avoiding any air bubbles. Reductex will bend with hand heat if you need it to curve. You can, I'm told, also use a hairdryer, but not too hot. And here you can see the completed roof with the slates in place. It was much easier than using the York Model Railway slates. I glued the roof to the carcass and held it in position with rubber bands to make sure it held in place. While that was drying, I could turn my attention to the chimney breasts. I cut a piece of the engineer's brick texture paper so that it was long enough to be wrapped all the way around the chimney breast with an overlap. Here you can see one completed with the paper cut away for the V-shape where it fits on the roof. I then cut out the 3 sets of capping stones for the chimney. These have to be glued together, making sure the holes line up into which you fit the chimney pots. Having fixed the capping stones on the chimney breast, you just drop the 2 chimney pots into the chimney before you place the 3 completed chimney breasts on the roof and glue into place. Well, here you can see the completed kit. Not much left for me to do now. A little bit of touching up with some grey paint around the edges here because that wasn't picked up when obviously I painted them whilst they were still in the card in which from which they were cut. And in fact I've got to do the same on the previous one, but this now gives me the start of Station Road with the 2 kits. And the next thing you'll see is on the layout, and I'll talk through how I'm going to light these buildings. So I'll see you. Here you can see the 2 workers' cottages on the layout and lit using the Woodland Scenics Just Plug LED nano lights, which are very small lights. I'll take them out to show them in just a moment. I have enough lights for the 4 buildings to have 2 lights in each, but of course I can mix and match that as I see the need once I've got them all into position. They're all going to go along this wall, and therefore the wiring will go out through the side here and down and under the layout. Because I had some pieces over of the Just Plug system, I decided to use them because I had them around. You'll recall that I decided on the Just Plug system for the hotel because of its ability to individually control brightness of lights without needing to worry about resistors and the rest. And that essentially is what this is. This is one of the lighting hubs, which has 4 independent outputs which are controlled by a dimmer switch, essentially. The beauty of the Just Plug system is you can expand it quite significantly from one plug socket using this thing called an expansion hub. Now the lights for the hotel are all on and working, running off of one of these Just Plug systems. Now that I've used this second one, I've needed to use the expansion hub. So the power goes into the expansion hub, and the expansion hub can then drive up to 4 of these light hubs. And you can daisy chain the expansion hubs, and I think you can have up to, I'm trying to remember how many now. I can't remember whether it's 4 or 8 expansion hubs, each with 4 lighting hubs running off them. But it doesn't end there, because what I have here is a port sharing device which allows you to run 4 lights off of one port on the lighting hub. And so both of these 2 lights are coming through the port sharing hub. So it's quite a flexible system, but it isn't cheap. There are cheaper ways to do all this using ordinary LEDs and other things that you can find around. But for the flexibility I wanted, I couldn't actually find anything that would allow me individually to control strength of the light or to be able to adjust it, rather than, because obviously if you put a resistor on, once you've got the resistor on, you've changed the value of the light. So that's how I'm going to be lighting all this, using the expansion hub, which is already under the layout, and I will put up here just a picture of it showing it the power coming off. This eventually is going to live under the board about here somewhere on the corner, and the wires will go out through the back and down and under. I don't want to send things down through the board because this is the area where it's going to be screwed in. If I have to remove this board, I don't want wires going down through it. So sort of thinking ahead in the event that I need to get under here and take this whole section off. So that's the next piece of work. I'm thinking about how I'm going to install these on the side, and I hope to get onto that in the next couple of weeks. So you should see some of that, I hope, by the time of the next video. That really brings this edition of Elvenhome to a close. I hope you've enjoyed the episode. It's very much focused on the building of these houses and where they're going to be on High Elven. And if you've liked the video, please do give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed already, well, please do subscribe. It'd be great to have you along. And of course, please do let me have your comments, particularly if you're the person that recommended Reductex to me, because I really would like to be able to say thank you properly. The next edition of Elvenhome will contain the tool time tips on the router. which I have recorded, but this is already quite a long video and it would make it too long, I think, if I included it in this edition. So that's going to be in the next edition. In addition to buying these lights, I've also secured some other lights, which to give an effect in a part of the layout that I've long wanted to be able to light better. And I hope to have that in place and working for you to see in the next video as well. So with that, and of course more to watch, but please do, if you get a chance, go over and have a look at Chris's layout for Oak Street and Rich's layout, Dug Park Junction. But until I speak to you again next time, that's bye-bye from me. Bye-bye.